She woke to silence. Not the kind that comes before dawn, but the kind that follows the end of something. The kind that means you are alone. For 365 days, no one heard her voice. No one knew she was alive. And on most of those days, she wasn't sure herself. But the island was not done testing her yet. Her name was Miranda Cole. 42 years old. A marine biologist from Seattle. She had spent 15 years studying coral reef systems in the South Pacific. This was not her first time at sea. She had crossed these waters dozens of times before. She knew the risks. She respected them. But the ocean does not care what you know. She was traveling from Fiji to Samoa aboard a small research vessel with 4 others. 2 crew members. Another researcher. A graduate student who reminded her of herself at 25. It was supposed to be a routine trip. 8 days at sea. Data collection. Sample analysis. Nothing remarkable. They had done it before. They would do it again. The weather report had been clear. Light winds. Calm seas. No warnings. But conditions change fast out there. By the 3rd day, clouds gathered on the horizon. Dark. Heavy. Moving faster than they should. The captain altered course, trying to skirt the system. But the storm found them anyway. She was reading in her cabin when the first wave hit. The book fell from her hands. The walls groaned. Then the lights went out. She could hear the captain shouting above deck, but the words dissolved into the roar of water and wind. She grabbed the doorframe to steady herself. The second wave came faster. Harder. The hull cracked like bone. Water rushed through the corridor. Cold. Black. Endless. She does not remember much after that. Fragments, mostly. The taste of salt. The weight of water pressing down. Surfacing. Gasping. The sky spinning above her. She called for the others. Screamed their names. But the wind tore the words from her mouth. She saw a light. A flare, maybe. Then nothing. Just darkness and the sound of waves breaking. When she opened her eyes again, it was morning. She was lying face down in wet sand. Her ribs ached with every breath. Salt burned her throat. Blood dried on her temple. She did not know how long she had been there. Hours. Maybe more. She pushed herself up slowly, testing her limbs. Everything hurt, but nothing was broken. She stood and turned in a full circle. Trees. Rocks. Water in every direction. No boat. No wreckage. No people. Just her. The beach curved away on both sides, disappearing into dense vegetation. Behind her, a wall of green rose sharply toward the interior. In front of her, the ocean stretched empty and infinite. She was alone. The first sound she made was not a scream. It was a question. Hello? Her voice barely reached past her own ears. She tried again, louder this time. Hello? The island gave nothing back. No echo. No answer. Just the rhythm of waves and the distant cry of birds she could not see. She walked the shoreline for hours. Her legs shook. Her vision blurred. She found pieces of the vessel scattered across the rocks. A torn life vest. A plastic container. Part of a seat cushion. A rope tangled in seaweed. But no sign of the others. She called their names until her throat closed. Michael. Sarah. David. Elena. Over and over. But the ocean kept its secrets. She sat down in the sand and stared at the horizon. Waiting. Watching. Surely someone would come. A rescue boat. A helicopter. They would have sent a distress signal. Someone would be looking. She just had to wait. But the hours passed. The sun moved across the sky. And nothing came. The first night, she did not sleep. She sat beneath a tree with her knees pulled to her chest, listening to sounds she did not recognize. Branches shifting in the wind. Wings beating overhead. Something moving through the brush behind her. She kept her eyes open until the sun came up, afraid of what might happen if she closed them. Thirst arrived before hunger. By the second day, her tongue was thick. Her lips cracked and bled. She needed water. She moved inland, pushing through vegetation, following the sound of running water. She found a stream cutting through the interior, narrow and slow. The water looked clear. She drank without thinking, cupping it in her hands and swallowing fast. It tasted like rust and earth. Within hours, her stomach turned. She vomited into the sand and lay there shaking, too weak to move. The fever came that night. She curled up beneath a fallen log, shivering despite the heat, and wondered if this was how it would end. But the fever broke. By the fourth day, she could stand again. She tried the water once more, this time boiling it in a salvaged metal tin over a fire she barely knew how to build. It took her 6 attempts. Her hands blistered. Her eyes stung from smoke. But eventually, flames caught. And the water boiled. And she drank without getting sick. She learned through failure. She tried to catch fish with her hands and came up empty. She ate berries that made her vomit. She built a shelter from palm fronds that collapsed the first time it rained. Every mistake took something from her. Energy. Confidence. Time. But she kept moving. Because stopping felt like surrender. And surrender felt like death. By the second week, she had created a routine. Wake at first light. Check the fire. Boil water. Search for food. Crabs, mostly. Shellfish when the tide was low. She learned to crack them open with stones. She learned which plants would not kill her. Coconuts. Wild taro. Small bitter fruits she could not name. She learned to move slowly, to conserve her strength. To think before acting. To plan each day like it might be her last. Survival was not dramatic. It was repetitive. Exhausting. Quiet. It was carrying water in a broken container because it was the only one she had. It was relighting the fire every morning because she had not figured out how to keep it burning through the night. It was checking her body for cuts that might become infected. It was eating when she did not want to. Drinking when her stomach rebelled. Moving when every muscle screamed to stop. The loneliness came later. At first, she was too focused on staying alive to feel it. But once the immediate panic faded, once the routines became automatic, the silence grew heavier. She started talking to herself. Small things at first. Okay, good. That's enough wood. Then longer conversations. She debated what to do next, as if there were 2 of her. One trying to stay rational. One beginning to crack. She marked the days by carving lines into a tree trunk near her shelter. 1 line for each sunrise. She counted them obsessively at first. 7. 14. 21. But after a month, she stopped. The numbers stopped meaning anything. Time became a loop. Wake. Survive. Sleep. Repeat. Days blurred together. Weeks disappeared. She lost track. And eventually, she stopped trying to keep it. She thought about her daughter often. 16 years old. Living with her father in Oregon. Miranda had not seen her in 2 years. Work had kept her away. Always another expedition. Another research grant. Another reason to stay gone. They had fought before she left. Something small. Something stupid. Miranda could not even remember what it was about now. But she remembered the look on her daughter's face. Hurt. Disappointed. Tired of being second place. She replayed their last conversation in her mind until the words lost shape. She wondered if her daughter thought she was dead. She wondered if anyone was still looking. She wondered if they had held a funeral. If people had cried. If her ex-husband had said kind things about her. She wondered if her daughter blamed her for leaving. For always leaving. She wondered if, in some terrible way, this was what she deserved. The storms came without warning. The first one tore her shelter apart. She crouched beneath a rock overhang, soaked and shivering, watching the rain turn the beach into a river. Lightning split the sky. Thunder shook the ground. She pressed her hands over her ears and waited for it to pass. When it did, her shelter was gone. Her fire was out. Her supplies were scattered across the sand. She sat in the mud and stared at the wreckage. Then she stood up. And she rebuilt. Because there was nothing else to do. The second storm was worse. It came in the night. No warning. Just wind and rain and darkness. It flooded the stream. It ripped branches from trees. It left her huddled in a shallow cave, water rising around her ankles, wondering if the island would simply wash away. When morning came, she emerged to find half her food cache destroyed. The containers she had salvaged were gone. Weeks of work, erased in a single night. She did not cry. She was too tired to cry. She just started over. By the 4th month, she stopped expecting rescue. The hope had been eating her alive. Every morning, she scanned the horizon. Every night, she listened for engines. But the ocean stayed empty. The sky stayed silent. And slowly, the hoping became its own kind of torture. A weight she could not carry anymore. So she let it go. Not all at once. But piece by piece, like shedding weight. She stopped scanning. She stopped listening. She accepted that this was her life now. This island. This routine. This silence. Maybe forever. Her body changed. She lost weight. Her clothes hung loose, then fell apart entirely. She fashioned new coverings from woven leaves and salvaged fabric. Her skin darkened and toughened under the relentless sun. Her hands grew calloused and scarred. Her hair, once shoulder-length and carefully maintained, became matted and impossible to manage. She cut it short with a sharp stone, hacking at it in frustration until it was uneven and rough. She barely recognized herself in the reflection of a tidal pool. The woman staring back looked feral. Hollow. Someone she used to know. She spoke less. Then hardly at all. There was no point. Her voice had become a stranger to her. When she did speak, it sounded wrong. Hoarse. Broken. So she stayed quiet. She communicated with the island in other ways. Reading the sky for storms. Watching the tide for patterns. Learning which rocks held crabs. Which trees bore fruit. Which paths were safe. The breaking point came during the 7th month. She had been feeling weak for days. Dizzy. Feverish. She ignored it at first, pushing through. But one morning, she collapsed near the stream. Her legs gave out. Her vision went white. Her muscles refused to move. She lay there in the dirt, staring up at the canopy, and for the first time, she thought about stopping. Not dying, exactly. Just not trying anymore. Just letting go. It would be easy. Easier than this. She could close her eyes. Stop moving. Stop fighting. And the island would take care of the rest. She stayed there for hours. Maybe longer. Time blurred. She thought about her daughter. She thought about the others on the boat. She thought about all the small choices that had led her to this moment. And then, quietly, she thought, if I stop moving, the island wins. She did not want to get up. But she did. Slowly. Painfully. She dragged herself back to the shelter. She forced herself to drink. To eat. To breathe. Not because she felt hope, but because stopping felt like betrayal. Of herself. Of the part of her that had survived this long. Of the people who might still remember her name. The fever broke after 3 days. She did not celebrate. She simply continued. By the 9th month, survival had become instinct. She no longer thought about what to do. Her body knew. Her mind had quieted. The panic was gone. The loneliness had dulled into something manageable. She existed. Nothing more. Nothing less. She moved through the island like a ghost, efficient and silent. She had become part of it. The rhythms of the tide. The patterns of the wind. The language of the trees. She understood them now. And in a strange, terrible way, she felt at peace. She stopped marking days. She stopped talking to herself. She stopped wondering if anyone was coming. She simply lived. One breath. One step. One day. And then the next. The island had broken her. And then it had rebuilt her into something else. Something harder. Something that could endure. The boat appeared on a morning that felt like any other. She was gathering firewood near the northern beach when she heard it. A sound that did not belong. Mechanical. Distant. Unnatural. She froze. At first, she thought she was imagining it. Hallucinations were not uncommon anymore. Her mind played tricks. Showed her things that were not there. But the sound grew louder. Closer. Real. She dropped the wood and ran. Her feet pounded against the sand. Her heart hammered in her chest. She burst through the tree line and stopped. There. A small fishing vessel, maybe 200 meters offshore, moving parallel to the island. She screamed. She waved her arms. She jumped. But they did not see her. The boat kept moving. Steady. Indifferent. Leaving. Panic seized her chest. She grabbed a piece of driftwood and held it above her head, waving it frantically. Still nothing. The boat was passing. Disappearing. Fading back into the vastness she had stared at for 11 months. No. Not again. Not like this. She did not think. She ran into the water. The cold hit her like a fist. She swam hard, choking on salt, her arms burning. She screamed again, a raw, animal sound that tore from somewhere deep inside her. And this time, someone turned. A man on the deck. He pointed. Shouted. The boat slowed. Stopped. Turned back. They pulled her aboard. Hands reached down. Lifted her. Wrapped her in blankets. She could not speak. Could not cry. She sat on the deck, dripping and shaking, staring at the faces around her. They asked her questions. English. Then another language she did not understand. She did not answer. She could not find the words. They had left her somewhere on the island, buried beneath 11 months of silence. They gave her water. She drank slowly, her hands trembling. They radioed for help. A Coast Guard vessel. Medical evacuation. She barely heard them. She kept looking back at the island, watching it shrink against the horizon. Watching the place that had been her entire world fade into nothing. She spent 2 weeks in a hospital in Fiji. Dehydrated. Malnourished. Infected wounds on her legs and arms. Severe sun damage. Anemia. But alive. The doctors called it a miracle. The media called it incredible. Her story spread. Survivor found after nearly a year. Lost at sea. Presumed dead. Now returned. Her daughter flew out to see her. Miranda heard her footsteps in the hallway. Then she was there. Standing in the doorway. Older. Taller. Miranda tried to speak, but her daughter was already moving. She crossed the room and wrapped her arms around her mother, and they held each other and cried. Deep, shaking sobs that came from a place Miranda thought had dried up months ago. They talked. For hours. 4 days. Miranda tried to explain what it had been like. The fear. The silence. The slow disappearance of herself. But the words felt hollow. Insufficient. How do you describe a year of nothing? How do you explain what it feels like to forget your own voice? To stop believing anyone will ever find you? To make peace with dying and then survive anyway? She returned home eventually. To Seattle. To routines. To noise. To people. Her house looked the same. Smelled the same. But she felt like an intruder. Everything was too soft. Too easy. Too loud. She could not sleep in her bed. It felt wrong. She slept on the floor for the first month. Then on the couch. Eventually, she stopped trying to explain why. She did not talk about the island often. When people asked, she gave them the facts. The storm. The wreck. The rescue. But she left out the rest. The parts that mattered. The nights she almost gave up. The mornings she forgot why she was trying. The slow erosion of who she used to be. The person she had become in that silence. Her daughter visited often. They rebuilt something. Not what they had before. Something different. Quieter. More honest. Miranda stopped making excuses. Stopped saying she would visit next month. Next year. She stayed. She showed up. She learned to be present. Because the island had taught her what absence really meant. Sometimes, late at night, she still heard the ocean. Not the real one outside her window. But the one from the island. Endless. Indifferent. Waiting. And in those moments, she wondered if she had ever really left at all. If part of her was still there. Still surviving. Still counting days that no longer mattered. 365 days. No one heard her voice. No one knew she was alive. But she did. And in the end, that was the only thing that mattered. She had not given up. She had not let the island win. She had endured. And that endurance had changed her in ways she was still learning to understand. The woman who went into the ocean was gone. The woman who came back was someone else entirely. Harder. Quieter. More aware of how fragile everything is. How quickly the world you know can disappear. How much strength it takes just to keep breathing. She did not call herself a survivor. That word felt too simple. Too clean. What she was, she could not name. But she carried it with her. In the scars on her hands. In the way she hoarded food without meaning to. In the silence she sometimes craved more than conversation. In the part of her that would always be standing on that beach. Watching the horizon.